All right, thank you. So today we are going to start with part 2 of our optional paper 1, that is medieval India. Now, one portion of medieval India we have partially covered already, that is early medieval India. ये हो चुका है हमारा. Within this, major themes that we have looked at include the tripartite struggle, the Rajputs, and the debate on इंडियन फ्यूडलिज्म. ठीक है, इसके कुछ पोर्शंस हमको अलग से कवर करने हैं. दीज इंक्लूड दी Arab conquest of Sindh and the beginning of Turkish invasions in India, which ultimately led to the establishment of Turkish rule. Now, adjacent to this, we have to study the significance or consequences of the establishment of Turkish rule in India, within which we are going to underline some important changes, including political, military, economic, and social and cultural changes. ठीक है. In fact, underlining the process of historical change is going to be our main objective while we are dealing with this portion of the syllabus, as it was with the first portion. In fact, if we have to break down the strategy for our preparation into various stages, तो हम 4 stages identify कर सकते हैं. The first stage is going to involve underlining the process of historical change, including political, economic, social, and cultural change throughout the medieval ages. Political change is going to include the establishment and expansion of political rule, within which we are going to underline the contributions of different dynasties and kings. Secondly, we need to take a look at the administrative setup, including central administration, provincial administration, revenue administration, local administration, military administration, and the relation between the crown and nobility. We are also going to address the existence of elements of feudalism and how this institution evolved during the entire period of the medieval age. ठीक है, इकोनॉमी में किन थीम्स में हम बांट सकते हैं इकोनॉमी को? agrarian economy, further crafts and trade, further technological improvements, further banking and finance, further urbanization etc. राइट, इन चीजों के बारे में हमें बात करनी है अंडर इकोनॉमी. We will also be talking about the class relations. What was the interrelation between the different classes within the agrarian structure, within the urban economy? तो अलग अलग classes का क्या रोल था, कितना इन्फ्लुएंस था, what was their overall position, problems and positive developments, right? इन सब चीजों के बारे में बात करेंगे. Within society, what can we talk about? With the establishment of Islamic rule and the advent of Islam in India on a major scale, there was a horizontal division of the society. So two major social groups emerged, Hindus and Muslims. इनके इंटररिलेशंस को हमको देखना है. फर्दर the earlier questions still remained relevant, questions relating to caste, further the condition of women remained a relevant question. The institution of slavery also became important with the revival of slave trade on a major scale, right? Within culture, what are the things that we can talk about? Islamic culture and art and its assimilation with Indian culture. This new Indo-Islamic culture is going to manifest itself in various fields, including architecture, painting, music, literature, etc. right? इसके बारे में हमें बात करनी है. Further, with the advent of Orthodox Islam, liberal Islam also began making inroads and deeply influenced the interrelations between the two major social groups, Hindus and Muslims. हम किस मूवमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं? सूफिज्म की. Parallel to Sufism, another liberal movement emerged within Hinduism, that is medieval bhakti. We need to talk about the factors responsible for their evolution, for their emergence, their general features, their characteristics, and their influence on various facets of history, including art, economy, trade and commerce, crafts production and polity. ठीक है, तो इन सब के बारे में हम बात कर सकते हैं इन दी फर्स्ट स्टेज. क्या करना है हमको यहाँ पर? वी नीड टू अंडरलाइन द प्रोसेस ऑफ हिस्टोरिकल चेंज. ठीक है, नाउ अलोंग विद दिस स्टेज कुछ और पैरेलल डेवलपमेंट्स भी हमको साथ साथ में कवर करने हैं, बट ये बेसिस है. दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द फाउंडेशन फॉर द हायर लेवल ऑफ आवर एनालिसिस. स्टेज 2 is going to consist of historiographical analysis. Now study of history is not straightforward कि एक कोई स्टैंडर्ड किताब है उसी को आपको पढ़ना है, आपका काम हो जाएगा, right? On each and every issue, different sets of historians have expressed a large variety of opinions. We need to be familiar with all of them. उनके opinions में similarities, differences, जो process of discussion हुआ है, deliberation हुआ है, उसके बारे में हमें पता होना चाहिए. एंड फाइनली जो उसका कंक्लूजन निकला है, इफ देयर इज एनी कंसेंसस और आर सम इश्यूज स्टिल अ मैटर ऑफ ओपन डिबेट, ये सारी चीजें हमको पता करनी है. नाउ फॉर एग्जांपल हम कुछ चीजें ले सकते हैं कि सम ऑफ द इंपॉर्टेंट प्रीशियंट हिस्टोरिकल डिबेट्स विद रिगार्ड्स टू मेडिवल इंडिया. फॉर एग्जांपल द इक्ता सिस्टम. Was it feudal or not, right? एक इस तरह का डिबेट हो सकता है. medieval भक्ति, similar to the European Reformation movement or not? राइट तो उसका वही सिग्निफिकेंस था जो कि रेफॉर्मेशन का यूरोप में हुआ, या फिर कुछ और सिग्निफिकेंस था? द मनसबदारी सिस्टम, इट्स नेचर, इसके ऊपर डिबेट हो सकता है. द दिल्ली सल्तनत, was it a theocracy or not, right? That is a relevant debate. The process of the third urbanization, can it be characterized as an urban revolution? Or not, right? तो इस स्टेज में हमको अलग अलग इंपॉर्टेंट इश्यूज के बारे में डिफरेंट हिस्टोरियोग्राफिकल ओपिनियंस को समझना है. हाँ तो the second stage is going to consist of this kind of historiographical analysis. फिर उसके बाद साथ साथ में we need to also step into the third stage of our preparation, wherein we will try to establish a dialogue between the past and the present. और better way to put it would be to establish a dialogue between different stages of the past for better understanding of historical evolution. For example, it is possible for us to compare the feudal system of the Rajputs with the Ikta system of the Turks, with the Mansabdari system of the Mughals, with the civil services administration introduced by the British over the late 18th and early 19th centuries. ठीक है, तो उसमें जो सिविलियन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, रेवेन्यू एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, मिलिट्री एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज हैं, उनको हम कंपेयर कर सकते हैं. Similarly, it may be possible for us to trace the horizontal division of the society which emerged in the initial decades of the establishment of Turkish rule to the problems of communalism, which reared their ugly head towards the second half of the national struggle, towards the second half of the colonial period, right? And uske kya effects हुए. So that is one thing that we are going to do at the same time. तो ये सारे तीनों stages अलग अलग हमको नहीं करने हैं, साथ में ही करने हैं. It is just that the level of analysis is going to be deeper. In some areas we will keep ourselves limited only to the first stage of discussion. कहीं पे second stage, कहीं पे third stage भी आएगा. But what is going to be common to all the areas that we are going to cover is stage 4. That is standardized writing. We are talking about answer writing. ठीक है, तो here we will try to integrate the various stages of knowledge into a standardized format. और ये standardized format किसके ऊपर डिपेंड करेगा? On our syllabus, on the previous year's questions, and on recent trends in the questions that the UPSC is raising. ठीक है, तो इन सब चीजों के बेसिस पर we are going to shape the way in which we absorb knowledge with regards to part 2 of paper 1 medieval history. ठीक है, now एक पोर्शन तो मैंने बता दिया था कि आगे क्या कवर करना है. अर्ली मेडिवल इंडिया का ये जो बचा हुआ पोर्शन था, दैट इज द अरब कॉन्क्वेस्ट ऑफ सिंध एंड द कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस ऑफ द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ टर्किश रूल फॉलोइंग द beginning of Turkish invasions in the subcontinent. After this, we come to the Delhi Sultanate. यहां पे भी हमको फर्स्ट स्टेज में जाओ तो कौन कौन से एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ चेंज को डील करना है? पॉलिटी, इकोनॉमी, सोसाइटी एंड कल्चर. पॉलिटी में क्या क्या चीजें देखनी है हमें? पॉलिटिकल एक्सपेंशन, How? Through the lens of chronological development and the contributions of various rulers, right? In this कुछ important rulers आते हैं. For example, कुतुबुद्दीन ऐबक, इल्तुतमिश, रजिया सुल्ताना, गियासुद्दीन बलबन, अलाउद्दीन खिलजी, मोहम्मद बिन तुगलक and Feroz Shah Tughlaq. After the Tughlaqs, दो और डायनेस्टीज कौन कौन सी? Sayyids and Lodhis, right? Now, the period of Qutbuddin Aibak is the foundational phase of the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, but Iltutmish is considered to be the real founder, as he gave a solid political, administrative, economic, social and cultural basis for the establishment of a new Islamic state in North India. Razia Sultan's period was a very interesting one, since it was a new experiment in the entirety of Islamic rule across the world. For the first time, a woman had the reins of power, and we need to understand what were the challenges she had to face and what were the factors for her downfall. Balban is known as the real consolidator of the Sultanate. Alauddin constructed the monument of Turkish imperialism in the subcontinent for the first time. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was known for his despotism, Tughlaq despotism. Feroz Shah Tughlaq was most famous for his policy of appeasement, while the Sayyids and Lodhis witnessed the decline of crown's prestige and power with the onset of new versions of the theory of kingship. Especially during the Lodhi period, the Afghan concept of kingship became quite relevant. Now, while talking about all of these rulers and dynasties, a few things we need to be cognizant of, including the persistent Mongol threat that they had to overcome, the problem of an Islamic state in a majority non-Muslim country, right? So, religious relations, the struggle of the new administrative structure with the entrenched established nobility, that is the Hindu zamindari, right? So, feudalism. Further, the early Islamic state in India was not a standardized formulation. It had to undergo a long process of evolution with many new features evolving under each of the successive sultans, right? Including the position of the sultan himself, his relationship with other power centers such as the military, such as the ulema, such as the nobility, etc., and how they all vied for a balance of power. And it is within this framework that we need to study the achievements and failures of each of these personalities. ठीक है, तो एक तो ये चीज हमको एड्रेस करनी है. दूसरा क्या एड्रेस करना है पॉलिटिक्स में? दी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्ट्रक्चर. क्या क्या देख सकते हैं हम यहां पर, बताओ? दी इक्ता सिस्टम, central administration, the various departments of central administration, revenue structure, local administration, and military administration. Apart from this, under successive sultans, they came up with varying ideologies of kingship. So various theories of kingship were given by different sultans. ठीक है, तो ये हमको कंसिडर करना है. कमिंग टू द इकोनॉमी, इकोनॉमिक चेंजेस में हम क्या अंडरलाइन कर सकते हैं? दी टेक्नोलॉजिकल इंप्रूवमेंट्स, दी थर्ड अर्बनाइजेशन, the revival of internal and external trade. What else? Banking and finance. Anything else? The role that the state played in economic growth, the various economic classes, economic mobility witnessed during the Sultanate period, right? तो पहले कुछ क्लासेस थे, उनका स्टेटस चेंज हुआ, some new classes emerged, what was the position that they occupied, right? Some previously affluent classes began losing their hold over the or losing their leadership within the economy. तो उसका क्या रिजल्ट हुआ? That is what we will address. Thirdly, within society, किसकी बात कर सकते हैं हम? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल दी horizontal division of the society, the process of social mobility with the establishment of Islamic rule and the advent of third urbanization, caste relations, the condition of women, and slavery, right? So these are the things that we can talk about. And finally, within culture, we can talk about the emergence of the Sufi movement and medieval bhakti. Their characteristics, impact, and significance. We can talk about the emergence of a syncretic Indo-Islamic culture which manifested itself in the form of Indo-Islamic architecture, Persian language, and literature, and regional language and literature. ठीक है, तो प्राइमरीली इन चीजों के बारे में बात करेंगे हम. And along with that, we are also going to, और दिल्ली सल्तनत के बाद हम बात करेंगे रीजनल पावर्स के बारे में. We are going to talk about गुजरात, मालवा, खानदेश, कश्मीर, Bengal, and powers in the Deccan region. In the Deccan region, we will talk about primarily Vijayanagar and Bahmani Sultanate. Once again, we are going to follow the same pattern. Polity, economy, society and culture के fields में various aspects of change. That is what we are going to analyze. In some cases such as the Vijayanagar and Bahmani Sultanate, our analysis is going to be deeper, much more detailed. अलग दूसरी जगहों पर it is going to be much more superficial in nature. हाँ, a home kingdom also we can talk about, right? We can apart from this also कुछ जैसे जौनपुर एटसेट्रा. तो यहाँ पे केवल एग्जाम्पल के तौर पर मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ. एंड ऐसा भी नहीं है कि सारे के सारे दे आर कंटेम्प्रेरी टू द सल्तनत ओनली, राइट? Some of them are contemporary to the Sultanate, some of them emerged or became prominent after the Sultanate, right? So we are going to talk about all of these, and then finally we are going to come to the Mughal Empire. In which, while we are going to follow this pattern, our focus is going to be primarily on the contributions of various emperors, especially when we are talking about the political change, right? For example, Babur, the role that he played in the establishment of the Mughal Empire, the problems and challenges that Humayun had to face, the career of Sher Shah Suri as an institution builder and administrative reformer, the activities of Akbar, who strengthened the foundations of the Mughal Empire and prepared the stage for imperial expansion, bringing about a new philosophy of rule, the activities of Jahangir and Shah Jahan. While they continued to expand the Mughal Empire, certain changes were visible in the nature of the Mughal Empire, right? And finally, Aurangzeb, what was his contribution to Mughal imperialism? What were the mistakes that he made? Whether, if at all, he was responsible for the decline of the Mughal Empire. And then finally, we are going to talk about the various factors for the downfall of the Mughal Empire. Okay? And following this, we are going to talk about the Marathas. Maratha history may be formally divided primarily into two phases. The early phase, where the establishment of the Maratha state took place primarily due to the efforts of the first Chhatrapati Shivaji, right? So the reforms introduced by him, that we have to talk about, and then the imperial stage, that is the transformation of the Maratha state into a proper empire. This is also known as the stage of or phase of Peshwa rule, also known as the phase of the Maratha Confederacy, right? तो यहाँ पे जो ये अर्ली वाला फेज है, दैट इज पार्ट ऑफ आवर मेडिवल हिस्ट्री पोर्शन, और जो इंपीरियल स्टेज है दैट इज पार्ट ऑफ द पेपर 2 मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री, राइट? तो ये वाला पोर्शन हम इसमें नहीं कवर करेंगे, वी आर गोइंग टू कवर दिस पोर्शन ओनली, ठीक है? तो आई होप कि आपके माइंड्स में एक ब्लूप्रिंट बन गया होगा कि क्या क्या हमको कवर करना है, बेसिक क्रोनोलॉजी समझ में आ गया होगा, एंड व्हाट आर दोज थिंग्स वेयर वी आर गोइंग टू फोकस अपॉन मोस्ट, राइट? नाउ कमिंग टू द वेरी फर्स्ट थीम, दैट इज अर्ली medieval India. First topic that we need to cover is the Arab conquest of Sindh. On a map of the subcontinent, सॉरी थोड़ा इनएक्यूरेट हो गया है, सिंध कौन सा रीजन है? एडजेसेंट टू गुजरात इन द टेरिटरी ऑफ पाकिस्तान, ठीक है? तो इस वाले रीजन को सिंध बोला जाता है. टू इट्स नॉर्थ पंजाब, टू इट्स ईस्ट गुजरात एंड राजस्थान, एंड टू इट्स वेस्ट बलोचिस्तान, ठीक है? Who were the Arabs? अरब्स कौन थे? अभी आप अरब्स बोलते हो तो व्हाट कम्स टू योर माइंड? द टर्म अरब, ट्रेडर्स आता है दिमाग में. व्हाट द टर्म अरब, व्हाट डज इट रिप्रेजेंट? It represents a distinct geographical, linguistic and cultural region of the world. ठीक है? So the term Arab, is it a religious identity or is it a linguistic and cultural identity? Linguistic and cultural identity. It is a linguistic and cultural group. Spread over which part of the world? मिडिल ईस्ट, बस मिडिल ईस्ट और पूरा मिडिल ईस्ट? पूरा नहीं तो टर्की नहीं आएगा उसमें और ईरान नहीं आएगा उसमें, बाकी पूरा मिडिल ईस्ट आ जाएगा, इन्वॉल्विंग द कंट्रीज ऑफ सऊदी अरेबिया, ओमान, यमन आएगा या नहीं आएगा? यमन नहीं आता उसमें, यमनी हेरिटेज इज सेपरेट, राइट? लेबनान, सीरिया, इराक, पैलेस्टाइन, ये सब आ जाएगा. Is the Arab world limited only to this region? No. It spreads to all those regions where the Arabic language is spoken. दुनिया में और कहाँ-कहाँ Arabic language बोली जाती है? In North Africa as well. ठीक है? So, if we were to take a look at the world map or map of this portion of the world, right? So, Arab world इस पूरे रीजन को सिग्निफाई करता है, राइट? This entire portion is part of the Arab world, including countries such as Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria, along with some other smaller countries. ठीक है? This is the Arab world. Now, conquerors from this region established their influence over the region of Sindh when? In the early 8th century, 711 to 712 CE. What was the name of the Arab commander who established Arab rule over Sindh first time? Muhammad bin Qasim. Do we have any historical sources for the study of this Arab conquest of Sindh? दो वर्क्स हैं हमारे पास. One known as the Chachnama, right? It is a Persian translation of an earlier Arabic work which recorded the victory of the Arabs over the rulers of Sindh. जो earlier Arab work है, that is now lost to us and only this translation survives. But this translation is anonymous. तो author ने अपना नाम नहीं ascribe किया हुआ है इसको. The second work is the Futuh-ul-Abdan. This is an Arabic work belonging to the 9th century. ठीक है, ये चाचनामा जो है it belongs to the 11th century. Futuh-ul-Abdan belongs to the 9th century, written by an Arab traveler from Baghdad who visited Sindh during this period, known as Al-Biladuri. ठीक है, तो ये तो कुछ बैकग्राउंड हमको मिल गया, राइट? नाउ बिफोर दिस, डिड इंडियंस हैव एनी डायरेक्ट कॉन्टैक्ट विद द अरब्स? था या नहीं था? ट्रेड होता था. कब से हो रहा था ट्रेड? एंशिएंट पीरियड से, मे बी इवन द प्रोटो हिस्टोरिक पीरियड. वी नो दैट द मेसोपोटामियंस वर ट्रेडिंग विद द हड़प्पन्स, राइट? तो the earliest recorded contacts with Arabs can be traced to as far back as the 1st century BCE. अब बताओ, इस पीरियड में वर द अरब्स मुस्लिम्स और नॉट? दे वर नॉन मुस्लिम्स. ठीक है. What was the nature of this contact? Peaceful or violent? Peaceful. Now the Arab world underwent a major upheaval and transformation with the advent of Islam. When was Islam founded? 7th century AD, right? Now the earliest recorded contacts of Indians with Muslims date back to the period immediately following the establishment of Islam, that is the 7th century CE itself. ठीक है. And what was the nature of this contact, peaceful or violent? It was also peaceful, involving both commercial and cultural exchange. The Arabs, since the time of the Indo-Roman trade, had been masters of the sea. ठीक है, तो उसको उस समय से ही अरेबियन सी बोला जाता था, राइट? दैट वाटर बॉडी. एंड The trading contacts continued even after the establishment of Islam. One shining example of this commercial and cultural exchange is India's most ancient mosque. कहाँ पे बनाया गया ये? सदर्न इंडिया में. कहाँ पर? केरला में. ठीक है. So the India's earliest mosque was in fact constructed under the patronage of a local Chera ruler, right? Kerala में Cheras का rule था, and he may or may not have traveled to Mecca to perform Hajj, to perform pilgrimage. He came back with a few scholars and preachers, and one of those scholars encouraged him to establish a mosque in his region and to popularize Islam. The result was the establishment of the Cheraman Juma Mosque, established within the lifetime of the Prophet itself, that is the 7th century CE. ठीक है? But it was shortly after this that India's first violent confrontation with the Islamic world also took place. Now, with the advent of Islam in the 7th century, a major political revival had started. Okay? Before this, the Arab world was fragmented in nature. Okay? It was divided into small kingdoms and tribal chiefdoms, and they were constantly fighting against each other. Islam provided a unifying force, brought them under the same umbrella, both religious as well as political. Islam therefore was not simply a religion, it was also a political philosophy and ideology. It also became the basis for early Islamic statehood. The name of the early Islamic state was the Islamic Caliphate. Now, over the remainder of the 7th century and early 8th century, the Islamic Caliphate spread from Baghdad to large parts of the known world. The whole of the Arab world was first brought under Caliphate rule. Following this, large portions of Iran and Central Asia also came under Islamic rule. Islamic invaders even made inroads into Europe, conquering roughly 3/4 of the territory of Spain, and all of this happened by the end of the 7th century AD itself, right? Now, अगर आपको इस्लामिक कैलिफेट को इस समय डिस्क्राइब करना होगा, सो हाउ आर यू गोइंग टू कैरेक्टराइज इट? एज अ श्रिंकिंग पावर और एन एक्सपैंडिंग पावर? On an expanding power. So having established their rule till as far east as Central Asia and the fringes of Balochistan, next logical step for their expansion was into India, right? And India में सबसे पहले कौन सा region आएगा? The region of Sindh only, right? Why the region of Sindh only? Because the region of Sindh itself was undergoing a period of political upheaval, right? There was internal division within Sindh. The political atmosphere was conducive for external conquest, right? As compared to Sindh, in the rest of the subcontinent, situation थोड़ी अलग थी. In the region of Kashmir, the strongest ruler of the Karkota dynasty who had established his rule and was expanding his power. His name was ललितादित्य. तो वहां पे expansion possible था नहीं. Similarly, to the east of Sindh, a new political formation had emerged and was expanding its control. This was the Gurjar Pratihar Empire. Further to the south, on the western coast, Arab incursions were prevented by a yet another political formation, that of the Rashtrakutas, right? तो बिकॉज बाकी सारे फ्रंटियर्स पे अरब्स के लिए दरवाजा बंद था, तो इट वाज लॉजिकल दैट दे वुड इन्वेड एंड एनेक्स सिंध. ठीक है. नाउ both the Chachnama as well as the Futul Abdan have given a pretext for the Arab invasion of Sindh. उन्होंने ये बोला है that मोहम्मद बिन कासिम was ordered to invade Sindh in order to punish the local ruler. Local ruler का नाम क्या था? दाहिर. Ruler of which dynasty? चाच dynasty. तभी चाचनामा नाम है उसका. ठीक है. Why did he want to punish दाहिर? क्योंकि कुछ अरब ट्रेडर्स को सिंध वाले रीजन में while returning from the मालाबार रीजन हरास किया था लोकल्स ने, पायरेट्स ने. They had been looted and mistreated. According to the Chachnama, the Caliph had asked Dahir to bring those who were responsible to, or hold those who were responsible for this attack, punish them. ठीक है. लेकिन Dahir had failed to do this. Therefore, this was the pretext used by the Caliph to tell Muhammad bin Qasim to go and invade Sindh. But real reason क्या है? The Islamic Caliphate was an expanding power. India was a very lucrative region, very fabulously rich. Therefore, it naturally attracted them. Sindh was undergoing political upheaval. That is why it was an easy target. ठीक है? So this is the background. Clear है? बलूचिस्तान रीजन इवन नाउ इट इज क्वाइट स्पार्सली पॉपुलेटेड. वहां पे स्टेट फॉर्मेशन के लिए जो नेसेसरी कंडीशंस है ना, वो कभी भी पूरे नहीं पड़ती थी. बिकॉज हर रीजन का, जैसे हमने पहले भी देखा है, ईच एंड एवरी रीजन हैज अ डिफरेंट पॉलिटिकल पोटेंशियल, राइट. अब जहां पे पानी नहीं है, आबादी नहीं है, फसल नहीं हो सकती है, वहां से आप कोई स्ट्रॉन्ग स्टेट बना सकते हो? इट इज गोइंग टू बी एक्सट्रीमली डिफिकल्ट, राइट. So that is why Balochistan at this point of time was not very politically significant. हाँ, यहाँ से कुछ important trade routes जरूर जाते थे, but this was mostly an area where sheep and goat herders used to reside. Settled agriculture हो नहीं सकता था, तो pastoral nomadism चलता था. This region became politically significant because it provided access to foreign invaders and traders into the rest of India. ठीक है. तो मोहम्मद घोरी ने भी पहली कोशिश इन्वेड करने की इंडिया को कहां से करी थी? थ्रू दिस रीजन ऑफ बलोचिस्तान ओनली. अरब्स भी आए तो कहां से आए? थ्रू दिस रीजन ऑफ बलोचिस्तान ओनली. ठीक है. नादिर शाह आया अटैक करने के लिए, तो कहां से आया? यहीं से आया था, राइट. So that is why it is politically significant, because it is the buffer zone between two major civilizations and states, India and West Asia. ठीक है. So that is why it is significant. अपना उसका खुद का कोई बहुत मेजर रोल नहीं रहा है कभी भी हिस्ट्री में. ठीक है. तो write down a few lines. Arab conquest of Sindh. लिखिए. Sindh the rich and fertile frontier region of the subcontinent came under Arab rule with the victories of Muhammad bin Qasim against King Dahir of the Chach dynasty in 711 712 CE. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट, two important sources give an account of this conquest. A and B. A, Futuh ul Abdan, a 9th century Arabic work by the scholar Al-Biladuri, who covered the history of Islamic expansion. So the main theme is history of Islamic expansion. ठीक है, Islamic expansion, and included a chapter on the conquest of Sindh. नेक्स्ट लिखो, B, the Chachnama, an anonymous Persian translation of an earlier Arabic work within brackets 11th century, which covers the victories of Muhammad bin Qasim against King Dahir, resulting in the downfall of the Chach dynasty full stop. This work also deals briefly with the history of Sindh before the establishment of Arabic rule. Full stop. The rule of the Chach dynasty has been portrayed as one of weakness, chaos, exploitation and misrule. ठीक है, तो the Chachnama informs us that before the Chach dynasty, a dynasty known as the Rai dynasty was ruling. Their rule was quite strong, their rule was beneficial for the people, but the rulers of the Chach dynasty had taken advantage of the munificent nature of the Rai ruler and they had overthrown him. ठीक है, तो गुड वर्सेस इविल का कॉन्ट्रास्ट किया है एंड दैट इज हाउ दे हैव ट्राइड टू जस्टिफाई द ओवरथ्रो ऑफ द चार्ज डायनेस्टी. अब कितना सही है कितना गलत है वो तो उस समय के लोगों को ही पता होगा, बट दिस इज द वर्जन दैट वी आर प्रेजेंटेड विद. क्लियर? नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. Indians and Arabs had been in contact with each other ever since pre-Christian times. With Arabs acting as intermediaries of India's trade with the Western world, acting as intermediaries of India's trade with the Western world. Full stop. Next main point. With the advent of Islam, the mutually beneficial trade relation continued. The mutually beneficial trade relation continued in the initial phase. Full stop. In fact, Islam made its earliest inroads into the Malabar region during the late 7th century. During the late 7th century. With many Arab traders settling in this region. Full stop. Sub point. India's earliest mosque, नाम लिखा था ना, the Cheraman Juma Mosque. Was constructed during the lifetime of the Prophet. In the Malabar. in the lifetime of the prophet in the Malabar region, in the Malabar. ठीक है. Now इसी पीरियड का एक और मेजर डेवलपमेंट हुआ जो कि हमको मॉडर्न और पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस हिस्ट्री में भी देखने के लिए मिलता है, जिसका इम्पैक्ट द इमर्जेंस ऑफ अ न्यू कम्युनिटी इन द मालाबार रीजन. आपने मोपला रेबेलियन सुना होगा. तो द मोपला कम्युनिटी, दे आर डिसेंडेंट्स ऑफ दीज अर्लीस्ट अरब ट्रैवलर्स. ठीक है, राइट डाउन बी. The Mopla Muslim community, the Mopla Muslim community, हाँ अभी इसके पहले ए लिखा था ना आपने, इसको बी लिख लो. The Mopla Muslim community of the Malabar region are also considered to be the descendants of these early travelers, of these early travelers. ठीक है. हाँ विकी, तुम कुछ पूछने वाले थे. इंडिया में पीसफुल मीन से हुआ because the local rulers may have felt that their interests would be better served by embracing Islam, so they may have done this, right? तो हर रिलीजन का कोई ना कोई एक पर्पस होता है, वो कोई सोशल या फिर इकोनॉमिक या पॉलिटिकल ऑब्जेक्टिव को एड्रेस करता है. तो दैट इज probably how it had arrived earliest in India, right? So we know for a fact that a local Chera ruler had embraced Islam and he had also started a mission to spread Islam within his community. तो कई सारे मुस्लिम ट्रैवलर्स को उसने इनवाइट किया. He gave them lands, they settled over there, began cultivating, intermarried with the local women, and with this population का increase हुआ, right? There was a further association, intermingling, and that is how the Mopla community was established in this region. हाँ, next main point लिखो. After the establishment of Islam, comma, the Arab world was quickly unified into a single universal state known as the Islamic Caliphate. Known as the Islamic Caliphate. Full stop. Next point. This young and aggressive state, comma, armed with a militant religious zeal, began expanding in all directions. Full stop. Next point. Within a short period, comma, Iran, Central Asia, North Africa, and even parts of Spain were conquered. Parts of Spain were conquered. Full stop. Next point. The caliphate had reached India's frontiers, and naturally wanted to bring the resource rich and heavily populated subcontinent under its control. Full stop. Next point. However, strong rulers, including Lalitaditya of Kashmir, the Gurjar Pratihars of Gujarat and Rajasthan, and Rashtrakutas in the Deccan blocked any avenue of expansion. Full stop. Next point. In contrast, Sindh was undergoing a period of internal division and chaos. Full stop. Subpoint. At the same time, it also controlled many of the maritime and overland trade routes to India. Next subpoint. Further, its rich soil and large population were also economically attractive. Next main point. Therefore, it was natural for the caliphate to set its eyes on this juicy target. Set its eyes on this juicy target. Full stop. Next main point. According to the Chachnama, the Caliph at Baghdad wanted to punish the ruler of Sindh for his failure to prosecute pirates and robbers who had been harassing Arab travelers in his territory. Full stop. Subpoint. Therefore, comma, he charged Muhammad bin Qasim to invade and conquer Sindh. Next point. However, next main point. However, modern historians believe that this was simply a pretext used by the Arabs to invade Sindh. Subpoint. In reality, comma, the invasion of Sindh was motivated by material factors. ठीक है, तो ये तो हो गया the background of the Arab conquest of Sindh. मोनार्की था बट फ्यूडलिज्म, जैसे कि राजपूत पीरियड में का फ्यूडलिज्म था ना, तो वैसा ही फ्यूडल स्ट्रक्चर था. वी डोंट हैव मेनी डिटेल्स अबाउट द पर्टिकुलर्स ऑफ रूल इन सिंध, but from the descriptions given in the Chachnama it appears that there was a strong feudal element, क्योंकि जो ruler था he was dependent upon the support of his important nobles for his military, right? तो it appears कि strong centralized army नहीं था, and this is the characteristic of a feudal setup. So it appears कि feudal setup था, but we cannot say for sure. In any case, the ruling class of Sindh was ill prepared for withstanding any determined attack from a huge empire which could muster the resources of a majority of the known world at that point of time. अब इस साइज में डिफरेंस देखो तो आपको क्लियर हो जाता है कि कौन जीतेगा कौन हारेगा. एंड टू कंपाउंड ऑल दीज फैक्टर्स, जो नेचुरल होम एडवांटेज होता है वो भी ये लोग नहीं यूज कर पा रहे थे बिकॉज ऑफ देयर इंटरनल डिविजन्स, probably because of entrenched feudalism. तो यहीं पे कई सारे ऐसे ग्रुप्स थे हु वर यूजिंग द अरब कॉन्क्वेस्ट, अरब इन्वेजन ऑफ सिंध टू फर्दर देयर ओन नैरो इंटरेस्ट्स, राइट। तो दैट स्पेन में एक्सपेंशन टुक प्लेस अंडर तारिक बिन जायद, राइट। मोहम्मद इकबाल का नाम सुना है? हाँ, पोएट लॉरिएट ऑफ पाकिस्तान, सारे जहां से अच्छा गाना भी लिखा था, राइट। अब टुवर्ड्स द लेटर पोर्शन ऑफ हिज लाइफ ही बिकेम अ पैन इस्लामिस्ट। तो उनको ये लगने लगा कि दुनिया में मुस्लिम्स के जितने भी अचीवमेंट्स हैं वो सारे के सारे शेयर्ड हैं। तो ही बिकेम अ स्ट्रॉन्ग खिलाफतिस्ट ऑल्सो, राइट। तो खिलाफत मूवमेंट पैन इस्लामिक मूवमेंट था, उसको सपोर्ट करने लग गए। एंड he started to associate Muslim glory, even if it was Arab glory, with a universal kind of glory. तो पाकिस्तान मूवमेंट जब काफी स्ट्रॉन्ग होने लगा तो he began to highlight those portions of Islamic history which he considered glorious, and one of which was the Arab conquest of Spain, led by a young commander Tariq bin Zayed. तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने कुछ लाइन्स लिखी हैं कि दश्त तो दश्त दरिया भी ना छोड़े हमने, बहरे जुल्मात में दौड़ा दिए घोड़े हमने। बहरे जुल्मात इज द नेम फॉर, मतलब बहर का मतलब होता है ओशन, जुल्मात का मतलब होता है डार्कनेस। बहरे जुल्मात इज ऑल्सो अनदर नेम फॉर द अटलांटिक ओशन, राइट। तो यहाँ पे हुआ क्या था कि घोड़े से जा रहे, मतलब जो स्ट्रेट ऑफ जिब्राल्टर है उसको क्रॉस करना था मोरक्को से स्पेन पहुंचने के लिए, एंड शिप्स पे जा रहे थे। लेकिन हुआ क्या कि एक शिप कैप्साइज हो गया, तो बाकी जितने भी कमांडर्स थे दे बिकेम अफ्रेड और वो अपने शिप्स वापस मोड़ने लग गए, राइट। तो तारिक बिन जायद ने देखा और उनको लगा कि यार ये तो जंग शुरू होने से पहले ही हार गए। तो व्हाट ही डिड वाज कि अपना घोड़ा उन्होंने समंदर में उतार दिया, एंड द अदर वॉरियर्स आल्सो फॉलोड हिम। एंड फिर उसके बाद आगे जाकर के जीत भी गए। फॉर द नेक्स्ट 300 और मोर ईयर्स यहाँ पे इस्लामिक रूल भी चलता रहा। एंड कई सारे यहाँ पे जो लोकल फ्यूडल्स थे दे बिकेम कोलैबोरेटर्स ऑल्सो। फिर उसके बाद यहाँ पे स्पेन में एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम विजिगॉथ रूलर्स का रूल चल रहा था, राइट। तो दे वर ओवरकम, क्योंकि वहां पे भी सेम प्रॉब्लम था जो कि सिंध में था, एक्सट्रीमली फ्यूडल कैरेक्टर था, देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ इंटरनल डिवीजन इन फाइटिंग, एथनिक फैक्टर्स वर आल्सो एट प्ले। तो यहाँ पे कुछ लैटिन स्पीकर्स थे, कुछ जर्मैनिक स्पीकर्स थे, राइट। तो उनके बीच में भी बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम चल रही थी। दीज वर द थिंग्स दैट वर एक्सप्लॉइटेड बाय द अरब इन्वेडर्स। तो वही सारी सेम चीजें आप एक को देखते हो कि एक यूनिफाइड है, दूसरा वाला नहीं यूनिफाइड है। एक में रिलीजियस हार्मनी है, दूसरे में रिलीजियस स्ट्राइफ है। एक में एथनिक हार्मनी है, दूसरे में एथनिक स्ट्राइफ है। तो दोज वर द फैक्टर्स व्हिच वर रिस्पांसिबल फॉर द अरब विक्ट्री इन स्पेन आल्सो। एंड तो दीज वर लार्जली द फैक्टर्स। हमारे सिलेबस का पोर्शन नहीं है वो, तो उस पर बहुत ज्यादा ध्यान नहीं देना है। व्हाई आई मेंशन्ड इट इवन वाज टू टेल यू कि हर जगह पे एक्सपैंड हो रहा था इस्लामिक कैलिफेट। Therefore, it was within the trend of history that the caliphate would try to expand towards India as well. क्योंकि India was famous across the world as a land of fabulous riches, as a very very fertile land, heavily populated land. तो किसी भी ambitious ruler के लिए it would always remain very attractive, and this is how these are the material reasons why the Arab caliph was also interested in conquering India. वो पूरा नहीं कर पाए, they could conquer only Sindh, लेकिन वही हमको देखना है, फैक्टर्स देखने हैं, ठीक है। तो ये हो गया आपका बैकग्राउंड। नेक्स्ट वी हैव टू टॉक अबाउट द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ द अरब कॉन्क्वेस्ट ऑफ सिंध। बताओ किस तरह का इंपैक्ट पड़ा, इंपैक्ट ऑफ अरब कॉन्क्वेस्ट ऑफ सिंध। ठीक है, तो एक तो कुछ सोशल चेंजेस आएंगे, वन ऑफ विच वुड बी द इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ Islam in a major way in the region of Sindh. There were large scale conversions brought on by which set of factors? Violent methods or peaceful methods? बोथ, बट सिंध वाले रीजन में लार्जली पीसफुल मेथड से कन्वर्जेंस हुए. ठीक है, और ऐसा क्यों हुआ? हाँ, सोसाइटी सोशल स्ट्रक्चर जो था वो फ्यूडल था, बट एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स हैड एक्सपैंडेड सिग्निफिकेंटली, बिकॉज ऑफ विच craft groups had started to proliferate, and within the feudal setup, what was this leading to? Caste proliferation and caste based discrimination. To escape that caste based discrimination, many of the groups which enjoyed or which held a lower position within the society, अब क्या करेंगे? in search of social mobility, they will convert to Islam, क्योंकि इस्लाम में जो स्ट्रक्चर है at least theoretically that is egalitarian in nature. I am not saying कि Islamic society is egalitarian by nature, उसमें भी कई सारे internal divisions हैं, but at least theoretical basis is egalitarian. ठीक है, तो largely through peaceful methods advent of Islam took place in Sindh on a large scale. कोई और changes या कोई और impact Arab rule का? Economic integration with the rest of the Islamic world, and the Arabs, what was their position within the global supply chain? They were always, since the historical period, they had been playing the role of middlemen, interlocutors, right? India during the early medieval period, हमने क्या देखा था इकोनॉमी में? क्या देखने के लिए मिला था? Feudalization of the economy. However, that feudalization, localization of the economy, the self-imposed isolation of the people of Sindh and the rest of India, that was broken when Sindh came under direct Arab rule. The Arabs now connected India to other civilizational centers of the world. दोबारा यूरोप से कनेक्ट कर दिया, दोबारा चाइना से कनेक्ट कर दिया, दोबारा इजिप्ट से कनेक्ट कर दिया, दोबारा ईरान से कनेक्ट कर दिया, दोबारा से अरेबिया से कनेक्ट कर दिया. ठीक है, therefore the region of Sindh witnessed a revival of trade. ठीक है, और क्या चेंज देखने के लिए मिलेगा? कोई और इंपैक्ट? क्या? देखो, जो प्री मॉडर्न स्टेट्स होते थे ना, उनमें जैसे आज इंटरनेशनल बॉर्डर्स या बाउंड्रीज देखने के लिए मिलती है ना, वैसे नहीं होते थे, फ्रंटियर रीजन्स होते थे. तो जैसे इंडिया और पाकिस्तान के बीच में अभी एक पॉलिटिकल बाउंड्री है, अगर ये प्री मॉडर्न पीरियड के स्टेट्स होते, फॉर एग्जांपल मुगल एम्पायर और सफाविद एम्पायर, या फिर दिल्ली सल्तनत और बहमनी किंगडम, तो यहाँ पे इस तरह का वेल डिफाइंड बॉर्डर नहीं होता, रादर एक फ्रंटियर रीजन होता, राइट? अब यहां पर ओवरलैपिंग अथॉरिटी होता दोनों का, राइट? तो मुगल एम्पायर का भी थोड़ा इन्फ्लुएंस होता और थोड़ा इन्फ्लुएंस दूसरे वाला जो पॉलिटिकल फॉर्मेशन है उसका भी होता. तो इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू बी इजी फॉर अस टू हाईलाइट कि प्री मॉडर्न पीरियड में पॉलिटिकल बाउंड्रीज या बॉर्डर्स के शिफ्ट होने से कोई मेजर पॉलिटिकल इंपैक्ट पड़ता है या नहीं पड़ता है, राइट? वो पॉसिबल नहीं है. हाँ, कुछ फ्रंटियर्स होते हैं वो साइंटिफिक फ्रंटियर्स होते हैं, जैसे कि कोई नदी हो गई या फिर कोई ऊंची माउंटेन रेंज हो गई जहां पे माउंटेन पासेस नहीं है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एक नदी है दी इंडस रिवर, Now this has for a long period of time served as a natural and scientific frontier for the subcontinent with the other western powers. तो ईरान मान लीजिए या फिर अफगानिस्तान मान लीजिए, वहां का अगर वहां पे जो भी पॉलिटिकल फॉर्मेशन है उसका अगर इन्फ्लुएंस एक्सपैंड हो रहा है, या मंगोल्स मान लीजिए, तो हमेशा कहां पे आके रुकता था? इंडस पे रुकता था. वंस अगेन इंडस रिवर वाज रीएस्टैब्लिश्ड एज द फ्रंटियर between the subcontinental cultural zone and the Islamic cultural zone. लेकिन इसका as such कोई major influence पड़ा नहीं, क्योंकि the Gurjar Pratiharas, the rulers of Kashmir, Rashtrakutas continued to resist further political incursion of the Arabs into the subcontinent. तो through the medium of trade थोड़ा थोड़ा कल्चरल एंड इकोनॉमिक एक्सचेंज होता रहेगा, लेकिन लार्ज स्केल जो कल्चरल कन्वर्जन है या फिर असिमिलेशन है, दैट इज नॉट गोइंग टू बी पॉसिबल until and unless this frontier is breached and नॉर्थ इंडिया में और वेस्टर्न इंडिया में इस्लामिक रूल एस्टैब्लिश होगा. And that is not going to happen during Arab rule. That is going to happen much later in the Turkish period. ठीक है, तो इसका during this period कोई major influence नहीं हुआ. Anyway, other than this कुछ और बताइए. Was there any possibility of Lalitaditya or Pratiharas helping Sindh against its invasion? Now, since all these North Indian states were vying against each other for political supremacy, the equation between them was often that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So there was realistically no possibility of this happening. Secondly, for the Gurjar Pratiharas, for Lalitaditya, priority क्या था? For Lalitaditya, consolidating his rule within Kashmir. For the Pratiharas, bringing Kannauj under control, challenging the authority of the Palas and the Rashtrakutas. So Sindh did not factor very heavily when it came to their political calculations. Thirdly, for all the North Indian powers, not only North Indian powers, for all the Indian powers, Arabs were playing a very important role in the process of state formation and expansion. क्यों? Because medieval period में elephant का जो importance था, that had been replaced by the war horse. Cavalry का importance improve हो रहा था, and all the Indian horses they were being supplied by the Arabs. तो Arabs से फालतू में पंगा लेकर के कोई अपना नुकसान नहीं करवाना चाह रहा था. And since Sindh itself was undergoing political upheaval and Sindh से कई सारे important trade routes cross करते थे, therefore the Indian powers felt that it would be better for them if यहाँ पे political stability establish हो जाए. For that Arab rule was preferable to them. And fourthly, we must not forget that this was the period of intense feudalization of polity. Feudalization का एक diplomatic और cultural influence होता है, an inward looking attitude. So it is also very likely कि rulers of Kashmir or Gujarat were not aware of, and even if they were aware of the Arab conquest of Sindh, they were not interested in preventing it. Because of their inward looking attitude, they were more interested in controlling their own regions rather than protecting any natural frontiers. They lacked the kind of consciousness which was necessary for them to organize such a large scale defense. So the question in this regard becomes quite moot. ठीक है कि कोई possibility था या नहीं था. Clear? ओके. हाँ, तो एक तो एडवेंट ऑफ इस्लाम, स्प्रेड ऑफ इस्लाम ऑन अ मेजर स्केल, रिवाइवल ऑफ ट्रेड देखने के लिए मिला. इसके अलावा और कुछ देखने को मिलता है? अरे अरबी क्या लाएंगे? अपना लैंग्वेज स्क्रिप्ट कुछ लेके आएंगे? अरबिक लैंग्वेज एंड स्क्रिप्ट. हमने देखा रिवाइवल ऑफ ट्रेड हो रहा है, तो जो इकोनॉमिक सुपर हाईवेज हैं वहां पे केवल इकोनॉमिक एक्सचेंज होगा या फिर कुछ और चीजों का भी एक्सचेंज होगा? आइडियाज का, कल्चर का, आर्ट का, साइंस का, नॉलेज का, इस सब का एक्सचेंज होगा या नहीं होगा? बिल्कुल होगा, राइट। एंड बिकॉज ऑफ देयर पोजिशन एज इंटरलोक्यूटर्स ऑफ वेरियस सिविलाइजेशंस, the Arabs played a very important role in transmitting क्रॉस कल्चरल एक्सचेंज। तो चाइना का माल और आइडिया इंडिया, इंडिया का आइडिया चाइना पहुंचाएंगे, ग्रीस पहुंचाएंगे, इटली पहुंचाएंगे, इजिप्ट पहुंचाएंगे, एक्सेट्रा, राइट। सो इंटेलेक्चुअल एंड cultural exchange was also facilitated by by the Arabs. ट्राइबल नहीं, फ्यूडल सोसाइटी था। किस सबसे? नहीं, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि इंटेलेक्चुअल और कल्चरल एक्सचेंज विद द पीपल ऑफ सिंध ही हो रहा है। आई एम सेइंग दैट द अरब्स फैसिलिटेटेड इंटेलेक्चुअल एंड कल्चरल एक्सचेंज बिटवीन द डिफरेंट सिविलाइजेशनल सेंटर्स ऑफ द कंटेम्प्रेरी वर्ल्ड। तो इंडिया को इन्होंने डायरेक्ट कनेक्टिविटी दी चाइना से, ग्रीस से, मतलब यूरोप से, इजिप्ट से, ईरान से, और इनके बीच में आइडियाज का एक्सचेंज फैसिलिटेट किया। सिंध कॉन्क्वेस्ट के पहले हो रहा था, लेकिन बिकॉज अरब्स वर नॉट कंट्रोलिंग द रीजन ऑफ सिंध, दे डिड नॉट हैव एनी डायरेक्ट लिंकेज विद द इंडियंस, राइट। मालाबार से हो रहा था, बट द वॉल्यूम ऑफ ट्रेड, वॉल्यूम ऑफ एक्सचेंज वाज क्वाइट लिमिटेड इन नेचर ना, इतना ज्यादा नहीं था, राइट। हाँ, मैं ये जरूर बोलूंगा दैट द प्रोसेस मे हैव स्टार्टेड विद द advent of Islam in the Malabar region, but it definitely accelerated after the Arab conquest of Sindh, right? तो इसमें कई सारे fields में Indian knowledge is going to get enhanced, such as mathematics, medicine, astronomy, geography, geometry, algebra, physics, chemistry, historiography, etc. The Arabs are also going to transmit several technologies towards the subcontinent, not directly but indirectly. कई सारे technological innovations चाइना में हो रहे थे, for example, and the Arabs brought it to the rest of the world. The other groups brought it to India. तो generally हमें एक chain देखने के लिए मिलता है, Chinese to Arabs to Turks who brought it to India. It is through this link that technologies such as paper manufacturing, gunpowder, etc. came to the subcontinent. उल्टा भी प्रोसेस हुआ, राइट? तो Arabs also transmitted several pearls of Indian knowledge and wisdom to the rest of the world. For example, the Indian numeral system, Hindsa, right, complete with the decimal number system and the zero, right? और इस हिंसा को अरब्स ने इनकॉर्पोरेट तो किया, but later as it was popularized across the rest of the world, it became famous as the Arabic numeral system, right? लेकिन आया इंडिया से है। Further, Indian knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, medicine also, right? ये सारी चीजें अरेबिया पहुंचे, right? Indian medicine, mathematics and astronomy, Indian physics. For example, the Indian health systems of yoga and siddha were adopted by the Arabs. The Indian theories of the eclipse were adopted. Indian works such as the Panchatantra and Ayurveda were translated into Arabic, right? And the Arabs were involved in this kind of activity not only in the context of India but also in the context of the rest of the world. So similar fields mein they were acquiring knowledge from places such as China, from the ancient Greek and Roman civilizations, from Egypt, from Iran, etc. Right? And then they were adding their own genius to it. तो कई सारे works को वो absorb कर रहे थे, translate कर रहे थे, उस पर research कर रहे थे और अपना खुद का उसमें addition कर रहे थे, right? And between the 8th to the 13th century, as a result of this, what is known as the Islamic Golden Age took place. This was a period of unprecedented growth in literature and knowledge in various fields ranging from philosophy to the material sciences to economics etc. ठीक है, तो कई सारे fields में इन्होंने excellence हासिल किया, right? Can the Indian contribution to the Islamic Golden Age be neglected? नहीं. Many of the pearls of the Islamic Golden Age were actually seeds which had been sown by previous Indian genius जो कि इन्होंने absorb किया, ठीक है. The Arabs also performed the role of interlocutors of culture. वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में आपने रेनेसा का पीरियड पढ़ा होगा, राइट? अब रेनेसा में डिड the Arabs play any role? They played a very important role in retransmitting the lost knowledge of Europe to the Europeans, to the Italians. वेनिस और जेनोवा के ट्रेडर्स अरब से रेगुलर बेसिस पे कांटेक्ट पे थे, फ्लोरेंस के ट्रेडर्स, एंड द अरब्स वर नाउ ट्रांसमिटिंग वेरियस लॉस्ट यूरोपियन वर्क्स, ग्रीक एंड रोमन क्लासिक्स टू द इटालियंस. साथ में they were also transmitting many of the Indian pieces of knowledge, Chinese pieces of knowledge, the Arabs' original works, the Egyptian knowledge, the Iranian knowledge to the Europeans, right? And therefore, indirectly, this the Indians also contributed to the European Renaissance. और बीच में मीडियम कौन बना इंडिया और यूरोपियन रेनेसा के लिए? दी अरब्स. ऑल ऑफ दिस वाज द रिजल्ट ऑफ द अरब कॉन्क्वेस्ट ऑफ सिंध. तो दिस इज ऑल्सो अनदर इंपॉर्टेंट इंपैक्ट. देन कुछ और चीजों में हमको ये इंपैक्ट देखने के लिए मिलता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, a favorite Indian pastime, chaturang, was adopted by the Arabs and renamed as shatranj. Who introduced it to the rest of the world, which called it chess. Now, जो एंशियंट इंडियन चतुरंग था और मॉडर्न चेस है उसमें कुछ डिफरेंसेस हैं. बट बेसिस इज दी सेम, ठीक है, इंडिया से ही आया। एनीथिंग एल्स? और कोई इंपैक्ट अरब्स का? Arabs were the first what? After their conquest of Sindh, Arabs became the first Islamic rulers in the entire subcontinent. Therefore, Islamic rule का earliest experiment इन्होंने conduct किया, right? And as part of that experiment, several new institutions and practices were introduced, which would be adopted and perfected later by the other Islamic rulers such as the Turks. और इसमें दो चीजें काफी इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाती हैं. In place of the feudal structure, they wanted not slavery. फ्यूडलिज्म को रिप्लेस करके ये लोग क्या लेके आए? अरे प्रोविंशियल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में सेंट्रलाइजेशन के एलिमेंट को इंक्रीज करने के लिए व्हाट वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय द अरब्स, व्हिच वाज आल्सो अडॉप्टेड लेटर बाय इल्तुतमिश, द इक्ता सिस्टम, ठीक है, इक्ता सिस्टम वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय देम. सेकेंडली, हाउ टू रिकंसाइल an Islamic ruling class with a non-Islamic majority population, and how to encourage large-scale convergence to Islam through an instrument of state policy. तो एक नया टैक्स इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया known as the जिजिया. ठीक है. New philosophies were also introduced to the subcontinent for the first time, which would play a very important role later on in defining the philosophical basis of Islamic statehood in India. Concepts such as Darul Harb and Darul Islam, ठीक है. For the first time, a new code of laws was introduced, the Shariat, and in the context of India, शरीयत में भी कई सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट्स हुए, राइट. तो इसके भी अब रीजनल वेरिएशंस एंड इंटरप्रिटेशंस इमर्ज होने शुरू होंगे, राइट. एंड शरीयत के सोर्सेस क्या क्या होंगे? तो कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट सोर्सेस हैं शरीयत के, सच एज व्हाट इज रिटन इन द कुरान इटसेल्फ, what is written in the hadith, and finally, देखो कुरान और हदीस में तो लिख दिया गया है, राइट, बस बट लेटर ऑन क्या होता है कि इसके अलग अलग इंटरप्रिटेशंस इमर्ज होते हैं. एंड इंटरप्रिटेशंस किसके ऊपर बेस्ड होंगे? लोकल कंडीशंस के ऊपर बेस्ड होंगे. Is the Sharia law going to be applied in the same manner across the world, or is it going to be applied differently by local rulers in a unique fashion in accordance with the local conditions in different parts of the world? Unique fashion में होगा, right? And therefore, interpretation known as fiqh also emerged as an important source of शरीयत लॉ. अब होली वर्ड को इंटरप्रेट करने के लिए एक नया क्लास ऑफ स्कॉलर्स चाहिए, राइट. हु आर दे? द आलिम्स और द उलेमास, दोज हु हैव नॉलेज ऑफ द स्क्रिप्चर्स, दोज हु आर familiar with how they could be interpreted. So as Shariat law was introduced in India, it was also necessary for the cultivation of a class of local religious scholars which could provide the legal basis for the and legitimacy for the state. And for the first time, as a result of this, in the context of India, the ulema class is going to emerge. ठीक है, अब उलेमा क्लास के अपने कुछ मोटिवेशंस होंगे, कुछ प्रायोरिटीज होंगी, and at times they are going to cooperate with the ruling class, at times they are going to compete with the ruling class. Ulema class is also going to have not only some political and economic motives but also some social and cultural motives which is going to shape their relations with the rest of the population, the non-Muslim population. अब नॉन मुस्लिम पॉपुलेशन में भी अलग अलग कैटेगरीज हैं, अपर कास्ट हैं, कुछ लोग लोअर कास्ट हैं, कुछ लोग रिच हैं, कुछ लोग पुअर हैं, कुछ लोग सिटी ड्वेलर्स हैं, कुछ लोग रूरल एनवायरनमेंट में रह रहे हैं. एंड नाउ जो बैलेंस ऑफ पावर जिसके बारे में हमने बात करी थी इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ द दिल्ली सल्तनत, दैट इज गोइंग टू बिकम मोर एंड मोर रेलेवेंट. ठीक है, so the entire pattern of Islamic rule, the process of historical development, अगर उसको clearly appreciate करना है, we have to go back to the Arab rule in Sindh. Clear है? अच्छा, अभी तक तो केवल सिंध की बात कर रहे हैं हम, बाद में सेम पैटर्न इज गोइंग टू रिपीट इटसेल्फ इन डिफरेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ द सबकॉन्टिनेंट एज वहां पे इस्लामिक रूल एस्टैब्लिश होगा इन अकॉर्डेंस विद द लोकल कंडीशंस प्रेवलेंट एट दैट पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. ठीक है, लेकिन सबका रूट कहां पे हमको देखने के लिए मिल जाता है? सिंध में ही देखने के लिए मिल जाता है. Further, the Arab rule of Sindh was also significant for some other young states which had emerged in other parts of the subcontinent at this point of time. So Arab rulers Arab invaders का ultimate objective क्या था? With the context of India, in the context of India, to bring the entire subcontinent under Arab and Islamic rule, right? इनको prevent कौन कर रहा था? The powers lying to their east. कौन कौन? The Gurjars and the Rashtrakutas and finally the rulers of कश्मीर. तो अब ये तीनों किस तरह से इमर्ज होंगे एज इन रिलेशन टू द अरब इन्वेडर्स? एज प्रोटेक्टर्स, एज गेट कीपर्स. तो इसलिए गुर्जर अपने आप को क्या बोलने लग गए? प्रतिहार्स. प्रतिहार का मतलब प्रोटेक्टर, गेट कीपर, राइट? एंड सेम सेंटिमेंट वाज आल्सो यूज्ड बाय दीज अदर रूलर्स. तो इनके रूल को फैसिलिटेट करने में अरब्स का कोई रोल था? अगर अरब्स नहीं होते, कुड दे हैव पोजीशन देमसेल्व्स एज प्रोटेक्टर्स? नहीं हो पाता, राइट? सो इट लेड टू political legitimization, provided political legitimacy to these rulers. ठीक है, तो broadly speaking this is the impact, right? लिख लें इसको, impact of Arab conquest of Sindh. One by one you can write down. और सबसे पहले थोड़ा एक इंट्रोडक्शन, वन पैराग्राफ, इंट्रोडक्टरी पैराग्राफ. Arab rule was established in Sindh in the early 8th century and continued to flourish for almost 300 years till the 10th century. Till the 10th century. Full stop. Next point. Three centuries of Arab rule irreversibly altered the course of history and left altered the course of history and left an indelible mark. An indelible mark. This includes 1 2 3 करके लिख सकते हो. Number 1, the advent and rapid spread of Islam primarily through peaceful means in the region of Sindh. Number 2, the introduction of Arabic language and script. The introduction of Arabic language and script whose interaction with the local language led to the development of Sindhi language and literature. Sindhi language and literature. Next point, the establishment of Arab rule in Sindh led to a revival of internal and external trade across the subcontinent. Full stop. Subpoint. It ended India's economic isolation and revived trade along with monetization and urbanization. Next main point, number 4. The trade networks revived by the Arabs also functioned as information superhighways, facilitating intellectual and cultural exchange, Subpoint. This exchange was bidirectional. And covered areas such as, ये सब लिख सकते हो, मैथमेटिक्स, मेडिसिन, एस्ट्रोनॉमी, जियोग्राफी, जियोमेट्री, algebra, physics, chemistry, historiography, etc. Okay. Subpoint. Further, comma, the Arabs also introduced several Chinese technologies which led to economic growth in India indirectly. These include paper manufacturing, comma, the use of lime mortar, comma, several mining techniques, and the use of gunpowder, Within brackets you can write, the Arabs first brought these to the Turks, who later brought it to India. Next point. The Arabs, कितने हुए? 4 हुए ना, नंबर 5. Fifth, the Arabs also benefited from their contact with Indians, Full stop. Subpoint. Several Indian works on medicine, mathematics, and astronomy were translated into Arabic sub point. The Indian numeral system, the Indian numeral system within brackets Hindsa, with the decimal and use of 0, with the decimal and use of 0, was adopted by the Arabs, was adopted by the Arabs. Next sub point. Indian scholars were invited to Baghdad to contribute directly to fields such as medicine, philosophy, physics, mathematics, and astronomy. Next point, or sorry, next sub point. It is believed that many of the Arabic fables, the Arabic and Western fables, such as Arabian Nights, and Aesop's fables, AESOPS, Aesop's fables are derivatives of Indian works such as the Panchtantra, Next sub point. Therefore, the role of the Indian civilization to the so-called Islamic Golden Age, cannot be ignored. Next sub point. In fact, the Arab conquest of Sindh, also indirectly contributed to shaping the modern world. Full stop. It was through the Arabs, that Indian knowledge, along with the civilizational wisdom, of the other great civilizations, was transmitted to the Europeans from the 14th century onwards, resulting in the European Renaissance. This is a question. What was the contribution of the Arabs in historiography apart from the Chachnama? Now, not much in the context of India, but in the context of the Islamic world, all the caliphs and other notables maintained a court of historians, maintained historians at their court, who continued to chronicle their achievements and good deeds. The same practice was also continued by the sultans of the later age from the 10th century onwards, and it was through the Sultanate that proper historiography का tradition was introduced in India from the 11th century onwards, right? हाँ, तो ये हो गया. कितने 5 हुए पॉइंट? नेक्स्ट वाला लिखो. इनफैक्ट इसी में एक और लिख सकते हो, सब पॉइंट. Another grand contribution of this cultural exchange was chess, comma, known in India, known in ancient India as Chaturang, and adopted by the Arabs as Shatranj. Next लिखो, number 6. The Arab conquest of Sindh may appear to be an isolated episode, and was regarded as a minor footnote, of Indian history by previous historians or by earlier historians. ठीक है. Now यहाँ पे हुआ क्या था, that since the Arabs were not able to expand their control in India beyond Sindh, तो इसको politically quite insignificant मानते थे पहले के colonial historians. सब पॉइंट लिखो. However, in reality, it had major political ramifications. Sub point. It was the earliest experiment of Islamic statehood in India and resulted in the introduction of various Islamic practices and institutions, or various administrative practices and institutions which played a pivotal role in future Islamic rule, which played a pivotal role in future Islamic rule. These include, एक एक करके लिख सकते हो, the इक्ता system, the jizya tax, the concepts of Darul Harb and Darul Islam, the Sharia law, the ulema class, and the emerging balance of power between the different power centers within the Islamic State. Different power centers within the Islamic State. ठीक है, तो एक पॉलिटिकल सिग्निफिकेंस तो इसका ये है, ठीक है, that it laid the foundation for the future pattern of Islamic rule in India. Many of the institutions and practices introduced by them were continued or were visible in the later phases of Islamic rule with a number of changes and modifications. ठीक, next sub point लिखो, the presence of the Arabs on the western frontier also played a significant role in political formation in the rest of the subcontinent. In the rest of the subcontinent. Full stop. Next sub point. Due to their hostile presence, comma, the rulers of Kashmir, Gurjar Pratiharas and Rashtrakutas could position themselves as quote unquote protectors thus gaining political legitimacy, ठीक है, so this is the impact or significance of the Arab conquest of Sindh. Take down a question. Highlight the factors behind the Arab conquest of Sindh. Highlight the factors behind the Arab conquest of Sindh. Full stop. Was it a minor footnote? Was it a minor footnote? In the grand framework of Indian history. In the grand framework of Indian history. Question mark. ऐसा किस हिस्टोरियन ने बोला है that it was a minor footnote in the grand framework of Indian history? The name of that historian is Stanley Lanepool. ठीक है? While writing the answer, you can include his name as the person who said that it was not a very important development, rather it was a minor footnote in Indian history because after Sindh कहीं और expansion इनका नहीं हो पाया. But on closer impact, they had a much deeper impact, not only on politics, but also in the field of culture, economy, society, etc. वो हमको देखना है second portion में. Will you be able to address it? क्यों? सबके बारे में आपको बात करनी होगी ना. You'll talk about everything. Minor footnote of Indian history का मतलब ये हो गया कि ना इसका कोई मेजर इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट हुआ, ना सोशल इम्पैक्ट, ना पॉलिटिकल इम्पैक्ट, ना कल्चरल इम्पैक्ट. रियलिटी में हमने क्या देखा है कि भाई बहुत ज्यादा ये इम्पैक्ट पड़ा है अरब कॉन्क्वेस्ट ऑफ सिंध का. तो वी कैन नॉट रियलिस्टिकली डिसमिस इट एज अ माइनर फुटनोट ऑफ इंडियन हिस्ट्री, रादर इट कॉन्स्टिट्यूट्स अ मेजर चैप्टर ऑफ इंडियन हिस्ट्री, played a very important role in shaping the development of medieval Indian history, and not only medieval Indian history but also modern world history to a certain extent. ठीक है, तो हम इसको ऐसे ही neglect, ignore नहीं कर सकते हैं. Clear? That is what we need to do. पहला पोर्शन तो काफी सिंपल होगा. इसमें about 70% of the space we are going to give to the second portion of the answer and 30% पहले के लिए आपको देना है. पहले वाले में आपको material factors बताने हैं और जो excuse है वो बताना है, एंड सेकेंड पोर्शन में सिग्निफिकेंस को आपको डील करना है. ठीक है, तो दिस इज द ओनली क्वेश्चन विच इज पॉसिबल फ्रॉम दिस टॉपिक. पहले भी पूछा गया है तो यही सवाल ही आया है कि व्हाट वाज द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ द अरब कॉन्क्वेस्ट ऑफ सिंध. अब उसमें हाँ ये चेंज कर सकते हैं कि पॉलिटिकल इम्पैक्ट क्या था या फिर कल्चरल इम्पैक्ट क्या था. तो पॉलिटिकल इम्पैक्ट के लिए अलग से क्वेश्चन आप प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हो, कल्चरल इम्पैक्ट के लिए अलग से क्वेश्चन प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हो. दैट इज द ओनली थिंग. ठीक है, चलिए आई एम एंडिंग द क्लास नाउ. कोई डाउट हो तो प्लीज लेट मी नो.